Let's take a look at some information and charts on ZRX for Brave New Coin. So ZRX is a decentralized exchange aggregator, decentralized exchange protocol. It sort of seems as though it fits in both the centralized exchange bucket and decentralized exchange bucket from a token perspective. And the general idea of any liquidity aggregator is to get a trader or someone who's doing swaps or anything the best price for any given asset at any given time. So we'll look at some DEX metrics and see where it stands comparatively. Most recently, they announced that they are expanding to Binance Smart Chain, which I think for any DEX aggregator is a smart play. They shouldn't necessarily be ETH-centric. Solana, Polkadot, Avalanche, they mentioned all these here. And that certainly strengthens the token's use case. It strengthens the token price, in my opinion. It's a win-win as long as it can maintain integrity across multiple chains. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And to the end user, I don't really care if I'm buying and selling anything. I just want low slippage, low fees, fast, best price, that sort of thing. So extremely smart decision on their part. Expect to see this from any project that can do this, will want to do this, and it just widens their footprint. It makes them indispensable in more than one way. If we look at one specific exchange that uses ZRX, you can go to Matcha, not an ad, but just a way to see how this all works. You can type in any token you want. If you type in ETH, and it really simplifies the UI, it simplifies the trading, it routes through tons of different DeFi apps automatically. It just makes it painless experience for people who don't necessarily do this stuff day to day. Even for people who do, it simplifies it to a great degree by just aggregating liquidity, getting you the best price, all the stuff I'm talking about. It's really a win-win if you are, between certain dexes or certain swaps. If you don't just use Uniswap, if you use all sorts of stuff, or if you don't care, right? Like this is the kind of thing you're looking for that sits on top of all these dexes that just like marries everything together for you. And just to hit on their Twitter, I like to talk about the Twitter stuff because that's where a lot of this information is useful and you get it from. They do AMAs frequently, the head founders, co-founders. So check that out if you want to get in touch with them about anything. I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer anything, but they're pretty transparent about what they do and what they plan to do. So for any project, that's a good thing. If we look at the DEX metrics, which have just continued to explode week over week, month over month, ZRX is in the orange here. So overall market share is low relative to Uniswap, Sushi, Curve, Bancor. And that may affect, token price in some way. TVL may affect token price. I don't know. I think at some point in time, people are going to start equating volume to like usefulness. So again, the more chains that they're on, the better from a token perspective. If we look at the aggregators, 1inch, ZRX, and Matcha, relative to direct dexes, it's still a small percentage, 13%. And that looks like that's pretty much holding there. I don't know if it's fair to expect more aggregators or less aggregators. If Uniswap wins, right, there's less of a need for aggregators because there's fewer dexes at the end of the day. So that's going to hurt the ZRX token price most likely if some of these dexes disappear over time. If Sushi ends up being a loser and Uniswap wins, I don't necessarily expect the aggregators to have more use cases, right? But as they're going on more chains, then they can say, okay, this isn't just about ETH anymore, it's about the ecosystem. And I think that's where they win at that point. Looks like 1inch still has a majority of the aggregator volume between 1inch, ZRX, and Matcha. They say here that the trades aren't mutually exclusive between ZRX and Matcha, so you can't just add these together and say that more goes through one than the other. But they're pretty close. People are using these aggregators pretty much one-to-one so far. Daily DEX volume, again, is just exploding, obviously. So if DEXs are popular, if swaps are popular, aggregators are going to gain popularity. If more DEXs appear, aggregators are going to gain use cases. And if they go onto multiple chains, they're going to gain additional use cases. And here's the weekly volumes. Weekly volumes actually come off from their highs in February, but they're still quite high relative to even centralized exchanges. And as far as ZRX, it's in the bottom slice here. So Again, not a massive part of DEX stuff, and maybe that's felt in the token price and in the market cap of ZRX, but an important factor nonetheless. Here's monthly volume by project, ZRX in the blue there on the bottom. So it sort of waxed and waned slightly in February, but if DEXs are here to stay, which I think they are, I think aggregators are going to be insanely important across the board on every chain. Looking at the token stats specifically, the transaction count in the line here in red and the average transaction value in the fill. And it makes sense that as ZRX was hitting all-time highs in price, token transaction counts went way up. And now as ETH fees are high and remain high, transaction values for ZRX are also increasing dramatically. So it's kind of a double effect there with token price and ETH pricing out those smaller transactions. As the token price consolidates, you see this huge drop off in transactions per day, right? And that's normal. So if the price picks up steam again, you'd expect transactions to pick up steam again. I don't think there's really a big reason to necessarily transact with ZRX naturally, like organically, unless you're staking it, which is a possibility. But that's a very small percentage of the total here as far as what's going on. You can stake the ZRX and earn ETH fees, which I think is a cool way of doing it. The ETH fees come from the exchange itself, the protocol level exchange fees. NVT, inverse metric of economic utility, over the past 30 days continues to decline to all-time lows, which is bullish. It says price is not keeping up with the utility of on-chain volume. So you want a declining and low NVT for anything. So even with the token price up here where it is, NVT suggests there's definitely room for additional upside. Active addresses, again, sort of dropped. This is just the token. This isn't like the DEX or anything like that. But they've dropped by more than half at this point as, again, price comes off of all-time highs. If we switch gears to technicals, 50, 200, EMA, VPVR, and RSI. First thing on RSI, there's a bit of a bearish divergence here. So anything higher quickly will put in likely another bearish divergence, which is what you don't want to see if you expect strong bullish continuation. We did come out of these doldrums pretty cleanly at this point, the multi-month range, as well as bouncing on the 50, bouncing on the 200. This is all ancient history at this point, pre-January. But we have all that in the background. We have DEXs in general just blossoming everywhere. Centralized exchange tokens, FTT, VNB, doing extremely well. We have the Coinbase IPO, April 14th. So all of that, I think, collectively is getting priced into the token finally, which is gaining a relevant use case, really. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Even though this is a governance token and doesn't necessarily represent, anything more than that other than staking, even though a lot of people equate these governance tokens with sort of equity in the company in some way, when that's not the case at all. As far as in the near term, there's a potential for a cup and handle here, which would be a bullish continuation. And that would give you a price target of 240, 260, something like that, as far as the upside, which would be definitely a new all-time high, I'm pretty sure, at that point. It's pretty far away from the 200, and the 50 and the 200 are spread apart quite decently. So typically this indicates mean reversion over trend continuation. So we'll see what happens here. But I think with everything going on, you'd have to expect this goes higher. You can kind of see that cup and handle quality a little better on lower zoomed in time frame. Is not necessarily zoomed way out. So this looks decent on the daily still, even on the cloud. The cloud likes it. It's above the cloud, bullish, TK cross. It's close to the Kijun. Everything looks fine from a bullish continuation perspective. One caution is any flat line in the cloud for a long period of time tends to act like a magnet. So, when we're in November, December 2020 and you see this long flat Kumo, I'm thinking that, okay, this is a pretty decent price reversal. The same thing here. This is a decent reversal target. If this breaks down in any way, definitely at a bare minimum, you're expecting $1.25 on the USD pair for sure. But otherwise, that's a small part of the decision tree. You should be expecting a bullish continuation based on the cup and handle characteristics that are forming here. And this is a breakout trade, so you'd be entering basically when it breaks $2 again. ZRX BTC, on the other hand, Still sitting in sort of doldrumville, even on a high time frame, 3-day chart. Not a lot I can glean from this. It's below the cloud. It's got a neutral TK. Again, here's that flat Kumo though that should act as a magnet the longer that it's there. There's no patterns here. There's kind of nothing just yet. I'm not confident this is going to have some massive bullish continuation. Certainly, at least on that time frame, it really hasn't been able to hold highs since 2018. So you really can't expect it to do much of anything. And if we zoom in on the daily VPVR and we add the 50, the 200 RSI, the VPVR sort of tells you that, okay, it's pretty range bound. And until it's above or below this volume zone, it's probably not going to do much of anything. So on the upside, I'd be looking at 6,500 sats if this breaks out again, which would be a local high retest. And then from there, probably some psychological resistance like 10,000 sats and this R2 yearly pivot. But overall, there's no real trend here. It's certainly trying to bottom out, but I don't think it's quite justified along for me personally just yet. So that's all I have for ZRX. Let me know what you think about aggregators in the comments below. Like, dislike, share, subscribe. Happy trading.